Russia and the United States clashed at the UNSC meet over the alleged chemical attack in Syria. Lashing out at Russia, the US envoy to the UN, Nikki Haley, accused Assad of going back on his word on the use of chemical weapons.
But we know who did this. Our allies know who did this. Russia can complain all it wants about fake news, but no one is buying its lies and its cover-ups. Russia was supposed to guarantee that Assad wouldn't use chemical weapons, and Russia did the opposite. The world must not passively accept the use of chemical weapons after almost a century of their prohibition. Everything the United Nations stands for is being blatantly defied in Syria with the help of a permanent member of this council.
The US also claimed that it has proof that chemical weapons were used in Syria.
What's going on in D.C. and with the president? We had meetings in the White House yesterday. I will be going back to D.C. for meetings today. I will tell you that, first of all, did a chemical weapons attack happen? Yes. The U.S. has analyzed, yes, it has happened. The UK has analyzed, yes, it has happened. France has analyzed, yes, it has happened. 3 separate analyses, all coming back with the same thing. There is proof that this happened.
Joining me this evening is WION's correspondent, Nick Harper. He's speaking with us from New York itself. Nick, good evening. Thanks for joining us. Despite Nikki Haley's statement at the UNSC today, is there still confusion of where exactly the United States stands on this possible strike on Syria following that chemical attack?
Well, yes, I think so. I think there's a lot of confusion about exactly when and if the United States will strike. Nikki Haley saying that the US President Donald Trump has not yet made up his mind, that there is no timetable for when strikes may happen. But bear in mind that earlier this week, back on Monday, Donald Trump said that a decision would come as early as that evening. And then we've seen several days of tweeting by the president, initially telling Russia to warn them that the missiles are coming, and then tweets the next day which seemed to edge back from that, really seemed to go against what he had been saying, suggesting that strikes were not imminent, but that they could come at some point. We know that the United States has been speaking to the UK and France, potentially to try and put together some joint action rather than the US going it alone. But I think one important thing to remember, we have the Organisation for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, the OPCW. They have a fact-finding mission in Syria at the moment. Some of them have started arriving. More will be arriving today. They will start work on Saturday while they're in the country collecting samples from Douma and the surrounding areas to look into chemical weapons use. It may not be the right time for the United States to go ahead with this potential strike. Not only will they probably want to find out what evidence the OPCW collects, but they may also not want to carry out strikes while that team is in country. So at the moment, yes, still very, very unclear about what the US is thinking in terms of military action when it comes to Syria.
Right, and you mentioned his tweets. They've been rather prolific the entire week. Does that sort of blindside the president's team, the administration, on what position really to take, given that he has in the past said that he wants to pull the United States out of Syria altogether?
Well, exactly, yes. Very conflicting tweets from the president really over the last couple of weeks in terms of his Syria strategy. About a week and a half ago, talking about wanting to pull troops out as soon as possible. Then it seemed that he perhaps was cautioned by some of his advisors and seemed to reverse on that idea, saying that troops did need to stay. And we seem to see the same thing this week in terms of those tweets saying that military action missiles were coming imminently. It seems as if Donald Trump was perhaps reaching for the tweet button before he'd actually spoken to his military advisors, saying that it was all going to take place as soon as possible, but then perhaps somebody had a word in his ear to suggest that perhaps now was not the right time, and he had to dial back on that rhetoric, dial back on that idea that the strikes were imminent. So there does seem to be be a slight flip-flopping from the president in terms of what he wants to do, how he wants to approach Syria, and probably those military advisors in the background trying to get a word in edgeways as Donald Trump reaches for his phone to send out another tweet. It's been a very conflicted and confusing last few weeks.
Absolutely, and I suppose that conflicted American positions also put the United States allies in a sticky situation. I'm talking about the United Kingdom, I'm talking about Israel. How exactly do they go about forming, let's say, a consolidated idea on how to proceed when it comes to Syria and this purported chemical attack?
Well, I think it is difficult. We do know that Donald Trump has been speaking on the phone with the leaders of the United Kingdom and of France. Both of them have said that they want to potentially go ahead with some sort of military action. Emmanuel Macron of France said that he had proof that Syria was behind the chemical weapons attack in Douma last weekend. The UK's Prime Minister Theresa May cautioned a little bit more, saying that she wanted evidence. But bear in mind that there was also that attack against the former Russian spy that happened inside the United Kingdom in the town of Salisbury, that the United Kingdom says was the work of Russia. So it seems that all three of those allies are very much getting together at the moment, trying to work out a plan. We are told that they are talking, so it seems as if the plan is one that they're coming up with jointly, but it's not clear yet when they want to press the button for any potential military action.
And on the other side, the flip side, I suppose, is Russia. It's being resolute in its stance when it comes to Salisbury and, of course, its relationship with the ally Bashar al-Assad. So I guess the battle lines are quite clearly drawn.
Very clearly drawn, yeah. Russia very much keeping to its narrative, saying again through its foreign ministry and also through the US ambassador to the United Nations at this meeting a little bit earlier, that those alleged chemical weapon attacks last weekend were faked, that the images that were beamed around the world of children choking were in fact people who were just acting the part, who were pretending that there was a chemical weapons attack when there actually hadn't been. The Russians going as far to suggest that the UK was involved in faking that attack in response to what had happened in the United Kingdom with the poisoning of that former Russian spy. So the Russians very much saying that their ally Syria has not carried out a chemical weapons attack, keeping very strictly to that idea that it all was faked, but at the same time cautioning that any military action taken by the US, the UK or France would be met with Russian retaliation, and there would potentially be a considerable fallout right across all those countries if this proxy war was suddenly begun.